Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle with Scott Varilek of Kooima Varilek. Well, over in the grains, we are trying to push higher in most of the complex there after a mixed start. Livestock futures, cattle futures mixed to higher. We're lower in the hogs this morning. And Scott, let's talk about the cattle because we have had a correction this week. A lot of it coming on lower cash and the lower cutouts, right?
Yeah, and thanks for having me. So pressure on the cattle, livestock in general here, and a lot to digest for me. So it's on trading on the weaker side. We had the 190 cash for several weeks behind us, and then it has started to slip, and that still feels like what's happening. We had a little cash trade develop that was kind of 185. Producers trying to get 186 couldn't get it, starts to slip to 185, and not everybody's getting 185. There's actually been some less, some 183 as low as that. So I think that's just kind of, we see the futures down, we're feeling a little bit more pressure. We've had this leverage for so long that I think it's just it feels like it's starting to slip just a little bit here. And as you had said, the boxes start to slip as well. Maybe it's a little bit seasonal for me. I don't know how many turkeys you can buy this time of year. It's only going to be one for me, one and done, but only because my wife tells me to, but otherwise I'd be without that too. But are seeing that little seasonal break in the boxes here. So
yeah, and some of the losing the leverage that you talk about is going to come from these weights continuing to creep up, right?
That's what has me the most worried. We've seen the carcass weights and what we can do with our performance and, good feeding weather and cheap corn. So it pays to put that weight on while trying to say we don't want to get the sheep pulled over our eyes here, because there's going to come a time where we back up cattle too far and we want to move them all. For whatever reason, suddenly that's what's going to get the leverage back in the Packers camp. And starting to hear that a little bit when you say, okay, how is there some lower cash trade? Well, some of these cattle are getting too big. It's been paying us to do it, and we've all been willing to do it. But for me, I'm starting to see a little bit of risk on this, and Packers starting to pull in on that, trying to pull on that rein just a little bit here. And when they do that, they just get too much leverage. And that's when, the northern cash starts to slip, steady with the South. There's no reason these high quality northern cattle should be anywhere close to the price of that, the southern cattle that are on feed. I mean, the quality difference is enormous. And so that's just trying to tell me the story. And if North slips under the South, which in some instances it has, we've got too many big cattle for me as a producer. If I've got the big ones, I want them gone now. I want to get them gone. I think we've enjoyed the party. It's been good, but don't want to be the last one caught with too big a cattle when the Packers starts to really pull those in and start to say, hey, I don't really want them that big. I'm starting to hear that, and makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, and they've been pulling formula totals. I mean, negotiated volume was a little over 50,000 head last week, so they had to pull some of their own cattle. Let's talk about the technicals, because February live cattle, we're holding Monday's lows. Are we holding the 100-day?
We are chopping right around it. We had poked below it here the other day, got us down to, 184.40 spot that I was just below it, was able to get above it, recover. Now we're just holding right there, sitting here in the 184 handle. And I think we're going to kind of need to hold that because we've got, plenty of room below with the rally that we've had starting in September and getting all the way to this nice level here. But if we start to take out those lows, could start to wiggle the funds and put a little bit of pressure on it. So I've talked about the weights making me nervous. The charts are making me a little bit nervous too, because we've got, open interest at a pretty good level, funds that are carrying quite a few longs yet. And if they start to turn out of this market, could get a little bit brutal. So I'm trying to tread very carefully right here. I love to be bullish. I really do. I'm a cattle feeder. I'm a cattle guy. That's what I wanted to do. But right now, I'm really held back and trying to tread lightly here because I think that there's plenty of risk on the market right now.
Yeah. Funds, as you mentioned, very long, just under 100,000 contracts, futures and options. We'll see if they hold that when we get the next commitment of traders report. But the good thing is that feeders have been kind of the leaders here, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, cash feeders are strong. We keep hearing that. That's one of the reasons guys just keep feeding what they have, because they say, well, I can just put more weight on what I have because the feeders are high, and cash feeders are still high. When heifer retention happens, if we are starting to see a slight shift towards that, yeah, those heifers aren't in the sale barn, so that's even less numbers to choose from, and I think that's just a little bit evident. So if there's going to be a market that's going to lead us out of here, the feeders are going to have to be the leaders. So I think that's what's holding the live cattle together today, is just because we're seeing some of that feeder strength. The index is staying strong and moving higher, and feeders had gotten a little discount to it, and now they're putting some back on. So if there's a savior, that's the one right there, is the feeders.
And let's talk about the hog market. We hit new contract highs early in the week. It looks like we're kind of starting to roll over here. So, are the funds ready to start selling this thing? Are they just taking some routine profits, or what's going on here?
Yeah, that's kind of the big question. I still think that open interest number there, like the cattle, feels like the funds are still long and still holding on. And you get a big key reversal lower yesterday and more pressure today. We're seeing the cash and the cutout really start to break here, and hearing about the bellies and the hams moving slow. And so I think there's a lot of fundamental pressure getting put on this market, starting to slip. And I don't think the funds have exited this market yet from the long perspective. So if they do start to, could be an ugly long tail on the way down is what my thought is. But of course, I've been bearish the whole ride up. So I guess I'm still standing my ground. But for me, as I kind of digest it, I feel like, yeah, heading into the month of December, I think there's going to be some pressure. I look at the Feb and the April, I think they're still carrying quite a premium from where they probably should be. So watch the funds if they start to bail, and we could have an interesting downslide here.
Yeah. Of course, we've had the dollar moving up into some new high territory here this week as well. Hogs are very export sensitive. Has it been impacting hogs as well as the grains, do you think?
Maybe not as much yet. You still see Mexico as a big player, in the hogs and in the grains, and with all of the political news on, okay, who are we going to go to battle with over tariffs and whatnot. I mean, it could be some front loading that's been happening on some of those markets, but the uncertainty of what could happen, later, I think you've got a strong dollar now, and possible tariffs that are really going to pick up the pace. So quite a bit of risk on hogs and grains, markets that really need some of that good export business. And maybe we're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown yet. So it's a futures market. So we're all trying to digest this uncertainty of what's going to happen. What does the future look like? And are we going to keep moving these grains? So grains are, maybe a little bit more of in a sideways range here. Hogs have just found themselves, high enough to where they could have a little bit of a setback here.
Yeah, it really has looked this week like the higher dollar. What you said about tariffs have been a real negative for the grain market. We're trying to bounce here today. Do you think maybe we've got some of that priced in here now? Some of that fear?
I think we've had some priced in. It's not like we're at a high level we really need to correct. So some of that is priced in. Absolutely. We're at some low enough levels. It feels like we're range bound. It's not like we're looking to try to break out of the bottom side, or for me, it doesn't have the news that's going to break us out of the top side. Now we're trying to digest, okay, what does the new Secretary of Ag mean, and what do they stand for? So now the rumblings of, well, what's the uncertainty around that, around the production side? Is that going to be affected? Are we going to have to change, how we operate? So for me, we've got a consumer that's, becoming more aware of what our practices are. You've got your, my super beautiful, kind wife, even her, the books that she reads and what she's getting into, and she's asking me questions. Okay, that's interesting. So the average consumer is trying to dive into that, and maybe we're going to have to be on the front of that, what our practices are, and trying to research what is healthier and what is not. So could be some challenges ahead, and I think that's just a little bit of a worry, overall on the market for them. And then you can always talk about, okay, South America as well, so we've got a strong dollar, uncertainty in the politics, and you got South America getting adequate rains on a large crop, and we're coming off of a big crop. So just not seeing anything that's real positive on the greens that's going to really shift, some of these markets to try to get some confidence and rally behind them.
Yeah, and obviously that has been trumping this week some of the export sales that we've seen, and we had pretty decent weekly exports again this morning. And that's going to be kind of the case going forward. Do you think that demand is going to get pushed back in the background unless it's super huge? Or
Yeah, it seems like some of that really good demand is being offset by all of the other negative that's happening, and it's
okay.
we've still got a low enough price to where low prices cure low prices. Yep. So you're looking at it as an end user and saying, I don't mind some of this level. So you're willing to stick your neck out there and buy some of it because it is low enough. It's a low price in general. So I mean, you're okay with that. I mean, we look at the soybean meal at COVID lows. We're getting 280 handle here, 288 on the front month for soybean meal, and you're thinking as an end user, I'm willing to load up on as much as that as I can. That's a great price. It's a good product, and you want to put more of that in your diets. If you're in the dairy industry, all of those diets are going to shift and start pumping in more soybean meal. So I mean, I think that's going to kind of keep that floor, keep us in this range, just because it is appealing to have it locked in on this price, and I'm definitely doing that. You don't have to worry about the risk of it, getting away from you if you have enough of it on hand.
Yeah. So just to end, you kind of tiptoed around the whole political appointment thing going on. It seems like the market has digested Lighthizer as trade representative, Zeldin as EPA administrator. What about Robert Kennedy Jr. as the head of Health and Human Services? Did that rock the market at all yesterday or impact it?
There's talk that that's part of it, but I'm not sure that was the main reason for it. It could have been part of it just because of, trying to figure out who he is, what he stands for, kind of what I mentioned. And, are we going to see some big changes? So I just think it's that uncertainty revolving around it. So that's just going to keep the pressure on the market. We're all a little wound about what's happening, but it's definitely being talked about. So, I mean, when I'm hearing it in my ear from the rest of the, people trading the markets, they're aware of it. So it certainly could have been part of the break, but, you see a Friday where we get a little boost here. That's good. I don't think we have to react really quick right now and see some big correction, but as it evolves, we're definitely going to be watching it.
Okay. Thanks so much, Scott Varilek with Kooima Varilek. That is Markets Now.